So I told him that's really not a good place to stick that pen. Anyways, so today on the podcast we have Steven. Steven and I met at Origin. You have kind of two things that we could chat about during this podcast. First off, I met you specifically at a booth for your board game publishing company, WeRide Games. You have a really cool game in development about trick-or-treating that I'm excited about. And then on top of that, you also run a video production business that is something that I'm really excited to find about the process of you putting that stuff together and how you ended up where you are. So before we dive into any of those things, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm Steven Kraus. I'm a Pittsburgh native. So I'm sitting right here looking at a beautiful, cloudy Pittsburgh day. And yeah, I can't be much better. It's really good to talk to you, Nick, and I'm glad you introduced yourself at the convention. And yeah, glad you invited me on the show.
It'd be easy to have a conversation with you, which is why I really wanted to have you on the podcast and talk more about where you are in your professional life. So
yeah,
starting off, how was Origins for you?
Origins was okay. You know, I think for us, we only do about 2 conventions a year. That's mostly because of the stage of life all of the different game designers are in. We're all either, about to get married or having kids, or not me. I'm neither of those things. But we're all this very specific age where life is starting to, not get in the way. That's not the right way to phrase it. Life is rearing its head and doing other cool stuff. So we're managing what we do right now. But I definitely think, sorry, that's not your question. Your question is how was it? It was pretty good. I think PAX was a little bit busier for us, but Origins, I'm in Pittsburgh, right? So Columbus is 3 hours away. It's such a great place to, kind of look at the more Midwest game community, meet tons of cool people. And the other thing is I got some other friends of mine, more from Pittsburgh, to come out and help with the convention. And it was such a blast to, not only just hang out with them, but to also see their reaction to, the larger gaming community and the tabletop community. So, it was like a bunch of other D&D fans, for example, that had never really been to that larger community before. And so it was a great way to live vicariously through them.
So I could say from my experience, I've been to Origins 3 times. Once as a vendor, twice as an attendee. And as an attendee, it's incredibly fun. As a vendor, also very fun, but nerve-wracking when you consider how expensive it is to have a space there. So in regards to, I could say when I went, I just did the entrepreneurial option, which I think was like $650 for a space. And then I believe the base option after that is double the cost or something.
Yeah.
I didn't apply the last couple of years, but can you talk a bit about how much it costs to have a presence at a convention like Origins, and then how much you expect to make from sales of your games?
Yeah, so good question. So the rough cost to be there, well, the cost for a booth in this case was $1,600, just about, which is, I think that's right. I got to double check those numbers, but yeah, it was about $1,600, which is a lot. And, even compared to what it used to be, I think one year we paid maybe close to $1,000 for a booth. And, I think it's gone up a little bit. And, to be honest, even looking at, I'm comparing and contrasting, right? Because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. We're just comparing to other cons. Being at PAX Unplugged, for example, that's about $2,000 for our 2x1, a little more than that, like $2,200 or something. But for the amount of sales we're getting, I think we did about $6,000 in sales at PAX Unplugged, which for us was huge. That was a lot of product, and I think we were kind of going to Origins and expecting to have similar numbers. And to be honest, it really wasn't like that. We kind of broke even more so. We think we got about $2,000 in sales, which, again, for us, any number is great and huge. But I think for us, that was not what we're anticipating and hoping for. But I think because it was if we break even, we're still happy, right? Because we get a chance to build future fans. We get to meet people, and it's an excuse to see my friends, right? So it's either it's a hobby that pays for itself, or it is that extra money on top of getting to fund the next game.
It is weird because there's absolutely a non-quantifiable boost to your business that
Totally.
happens from being at those events.
And
Like,
it's funny.
I could,
Yeah.
so I could say, like, with the one time I was there, again, I was paying like $650 or something for the booth. I made, I think, 1,900 in sales, and but on top of that, I met wholesalers, I met game promoters, and I was able to expand my business so much from the connections I made at that event. And it's like, it's nice to look at the numbers because then you can kind of wrap your head around, was it successful, was it not? While all those other tertiary, that's probably not the right word, but those other additional connections that happen can't really be quantified to that specific event. So
Look at this, look at the what we're doing right now. No, I totally agree. And it's funny because I'm like, I think that's something that some of the other people that are part of the team with me at WeRide Games are much more vocal about, right? I'm sometimes in my own head about like, oh, we got to do this, or we got to, this is the number we got to hit for it to be even worth the energy, right? And I think everyone else has been much more vocal about, hey, look at all the people that buy games afterwards. Look at the sort of people we meet that are going to be, whether it's kickstarting the next thing or we're playtesting games that aren't out yet. Those are things that are much more hard to quantify, as you said. So, I think obviously the ideal is it's both like profit wise, a big, or it doesn't just pay for itself, but there's a little bit on top. But I think even when it is just break even, the other benefits of it tend to come back to us in other ways, and especially with Kickstarter, it's a great way to build that base. So,
well, let's talk about I guess what would be your source of income at an event like this. I believe from looking at your website, you only have 2 games currently on the market, right? So
yeah.
Did you have just like 2 SKUs going into this event of SARS products itself?
Yeah. So, and I want to be clear, like the games we have, I am just one part of the company, if you will, right? I'm one designer, and I also have my really close friends. We actually all grew up in Syracuse, New York together, and that's Kenny Chapman, Cole Jarvis, Damian Roberts, but they're the ones who do it with me. So this is very much a group effort. And I don't want to ever sound like I'm like, oh yes, my games. But the convention, yeah. So we came in with primarily 2 SKUs. That's going to be Knights of the Hound Table, which is our smaller 2-player optimized deck building game, and our larger box game, Dungeons and Co. that we just kickstarted last year. And we also have a bunch of we did a bunch of we have a deluxe edition for both of those. And it's funny because we're like sold out of certain things. So every convention we're sort of figuring out, okay, what have we not sold out of that we can kind of create a new bundle out of? And you go into our Square app and it looks like it looks a little bit manic because it's nonsense. So the short answer is yes, just 2 games, but there's a lot of other add-ons we have. Like we have a booklet, an RPG booklet for Dungeons and Co. We have that's the big one. We also have like a play mat for Dungeons and Co. It's funny, it's totally off random, but like what we don't have is we used to have these really nice mats for Knights of the Hound Table, and we sold out last year, and we haven't gotten around to ordering more because we're frankly saving money for this next game we're doing. And so we're like, every time people come by our booth, like, do you have those new pre-mats? We're like, sorry, we don't, but we're hoping X date we will. So it's always a bit of a like, no matter what we have, there's also something we just don't have, and we will have at some point. Sorry, my phone just went off with a piercing noise in my ear. The Apple
just reminding me to make sure I'm on.
It was like whatever the volume the volumes were out of sync, so got a little bit of a piercing ding in my ear. But anyways, sorry. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you did, and I like that you brought up neoprene mats specifically because I primarily do tarot decks for my business, and I always make a neoprene mat. Well, not always, but I regularly make a neoprene mat. I guess my recent one didn't have it. But so I love them because they're beautiful. They're so fun to feel. It's a great, easy add-on for people to add to their pledge on Kickstarter. They're very profitable, but I always get screwed in the shipping because it's such an awkward shape. And if someone's buying a neoprene mat and a tarot deck, the box is going to need a lot of filling in order to stop things from rattling around. And every now and then I'll get a message from someone saying, hey, I bought these things together. The tarot deck got damaged because it was rattling around the box, and I got a text to the fulfillment center. They're like, oh, we didn't put it in stuffing. So it's like, I'm starting to move towards maybe more printed fabric that can be folded.
Yeah.
Because like that's normal for tarot, and altar cloth is a common item. But as much as I love making neoprene mats, I think I gotta stay away from them moving forward
Well,
just for the sake of logistics.
they sell, like there's the game. You ever play Radlands? I know that's and I that's this game it's a two-player two-player deck builder. I think it's a deck builder. It's a two-player card game. But I'm mentioning it because they went really hard at conventions a couple years ago. Or they're a hugely successful game, but I remember seeing them a lot at these conventions, and like they have basically it is essentially a small, it could be a small deck card game, but they have a larger box option as well that is just basically the neoprene mat, higher quality tokens, and the cards, and it looks and feels like a big box game, and it comes in that big box because that neoprene mat can take up so much space, right? So it's like, it's funny that they've kind of been able to hit both of those angles, both the small box and large box purchase, just because of that mat. And hey, the mat's great, right? And I think especially with card games, it's a big add-on and just gives you a ton of people like them.
So I want to ask you specifically about your what goes into planning what your booth will look like. How has that changed since your first convention, and all the way up to what are things or changes you want to make now that Origins is over?
Oh wow, good question. That's something I'm just in that headspace now, and I think
I figured you would be.
I think the biggest thing that has sort of changed, or let me answer it this way. I think when we first started, we had just one game, and that was easy. We had Knights of the Round Table, and that is a small footprint card game where we can have essentially a like high top table, or honestly, in the case what we did, we basically had these like shelving units that we then put a black mat over and then treated that like a table to demo. And all we had to do was put 4 of those or 3 of those in a 1-by-1 booth, and then have like a really basic checkout table, and that was it. Because there's we just have these stations that we're pulling people over, we're talking to people, but the game sale can happen right at that station. There doesn't need to be necessarily a larger point of sale setup. There doesn't need to be really that much more stuff. And the other thing we used to do in terms of like layout is we had a lot more promo items. And so actually, Kelsey Wagner, who is someone who is also works with me in video production world, she's also an incredible video editor, and she also went ahead and made all these props for basically a commercial we did for Knights of the Round Table. And we use all those props in the set decoration of the booth. We also all wore dog costumes, for example, and it was great. And it was a really good sales tool, I think. But I think recently we've been a little bit more like, okay, how can we maybe evolve that or mature that into a more classic store setup? And I know this time we had a more like slightly more professional looking checkout area. And we also had, for Dungeons & Co. and for October's and our upcoming games, since those are larger box games with more setup and more pieces, we have more sit-down card tables, right? So for us, it's been kind of how can we anticipate how many tables can we set up in this space? And this time I underestimated it. I thought I could only do one sitting card table, and I ended up being able to fit 2 in there. So, however, that being said, I think one thing we learned from this con is I kind of want to open it up a little bit more in terms of where people like how people engage with the booth, and I'd love to move the point of sale system backwards, because people, I think we watched a lot of other booths, and I think we were actually near All Play this year, which if you don't know All Play, they're an incredible game company, hell of a booth setup, and they've just, I mean, I could go on about what they do right. Like one of the things they do right is all the titles of the game and like the one sentence log line it's not even eye level, it's above eye level. So like your eyes, they want to go up, and you look at these really nice kind of overhangs on each of their demo tables, and I'm like looking at them, and they just catch my eye. Versus if that was lower, which most people, us included, that all the game stuff tends to be lower. It just, I don't know, they're taking up real estate that is unused and people naturally look at. But anyways, I think their setup of having these open demo tables, and it's a little bit more come into our booth and there's a bit more flow to it. And the point of sale system is kind of a separate behind the everything approach. That's a really cool way to do it, and something that I think we're toying around with for PAX Unplugged.
Well, the way I see it is like, for what feels like a good, successful booth setup, the point of sale doesn't have any presence. Because then it feels a lot more inviting if you don't see like a station that you have to go to buy something. Everyone who's working the booth should be empowered with a Square reader or whatever you're doing, that they just whip out, tap, hand it off. And I don't think it should feel like you're like, okay, I need to wait in line to talk to this person. There should always be someone who's able to help you at each level. And I think, I mean, that's an ideal situation, but for me, it's always just me. So I don't really, and you know, I need to have my space compartmentalized so I know what I'm doing. But
totally.
I think as a customer, I love that setup, that feeling when anybody I look at can help me and I don't need to stand in line. And I think having not a designated space for point of sale is a step towards that direction.
Yeah, and I think we, weirdly enough, used to do that more, and I think that's something we've kind of gone away from. Not maybe partially intentionally, but I think it's where you're right. I felt that this year. I was like, oh, I really wish that we had a couple more Square readers. Everyone was kind of empowered to do that, like literally and technically, right? Yeah, I think that's something I totally agree. Like less point of sale. Yes, having games on display, but not having it be like a very specific, here's the checkout, here's the line, etc. And here's the person.
One thing that I always struggle with, and I imagine you probably have a bit of it too, is when you do want to introduce a new product to your lineup, it feels so bad throwing away all of your old banners and stuff, because now you need to focus on this new product and get new vinyl banners made. And it's like, at what point do I like recreate older banners? Do you have any type of like thought that goes into like, how do you focus on a new product? When do you stop focusing on old ones as far as the printed materials in your space goes?
That's a great question. When we did Knights of the Round Table, our first game, we made a ton of promo stuff for it, like banners, vinyl, etc. Roll-up banners. And I think for a lot of that stuff actually has like evolved with us. Like I'll give you an example. The first big backdrop vinyl we did for our booth, we did it as a WeRide general one. So I think we lucked out where, well, we didn't maybe luck out, but COVID hit us in a way, or the way COVID lined up with our timeline was we didn't actually do any conventions until our game was kickstarted out and shipped and fulfilled. So the first convention we went to, we were working on our expansion for it, and we had a couple other games kind of in the design process that we had initial like key art for. So we were able to kind of lift some of that stuff, put it onto the vinyl banner, and kind of, skip some of the initial, like, because I think we were worried that we would do that have that problem where a lot of our stuff would become redundant. We or not redundant, but out of date. We were able to kind of avoid that with some of the larger ticket items. But I think we're at a place where we try to just make the bare essentials. We need to market something within the booth. Like the really nice pull-up banners are always helpful and don't cost all that much, right? And seem to have other purposes too. If we make sorry, I'm gonna cut myself off there. They do have purposes. Also, the other nice thing is another thing to look out for is like we always end up putting live on Kickstarter this date on them, right? So we've started to kind of avoid that and have those be like things we can print out separately and just kind of adhere to the actual pull-out banner, so that it's gonna have just the information we need for that convention, but still be able to be used later. But we've messed that up a little bit, and we definitely have some things like we have a pricing banner that even this con, I was like, one of those prices, we don't have the expansion we need to basically make that bundle work. So there's always things that we are getting good enough but not quite perfect, especially in that kind of printed material.
I hate that there's no easy solution. You just have to be comfortable with throwing shit out. And it feels so wasteful, but there's really no way around it, because you're trying to get people's attention on products that are constantly changing.
And I think you're trying to evolve the booth every time. Like I know Kenny on our team has been really good about, hey, we should do this next convention and evolve it this way, but that inevitably means some other stuff we have for our booth is gonna go out of fashion or go out of style, right? And that just ends up sitting in my basement. So
to do, because I usually have a new product every 4 to 6 months, and what I used to do is I would always do like a 2-foot by 4-foot banner with just grommets on the edge,
Hmm.
and I would hang those from a long, I don't know what they call it, like a fold out signage thing. It's like a horizontal pole. And so like when a product gets too old, I get rid of that 2 foot by 4 foot banner and replace it with a newer one. And that, while it worked in theory, it looked pretty ratty. These different banners that are all kind of curled up because I keep them rolled up. And so what I did recently is I got like my biggest product and did one big design that was like 8 foot by 10 foot, and that looks way more professional in the back. And it also has consistent branding for each product. It's just the different logos and then like a faded out image in the back behind it. But then the issue becomes when I have a new product, I'm gonna have to do a whole new banner for that and hang it somewhere else that might not match the old banner that's listing like 10 products.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah,
So
it's
how much mind space in your booth or how much branding in your booth would you say goes towards WeRide Games as an entity versus individual products?
So I'd say about 10% goes to WeRide Games. Really, the only big
Okay.
thing we have is our banner. What is that? 10? Yeah, it's 10 by 10. It's a 10 by 10 vinyl backdrop. But even in there, we have characters from each of our current games that we're working on. So, I think that's part of it. And then color scheme, we're black and purple. So, we have a lot of purple. We have these like I don't know what to call them. They're kind of almost like coat of arms or like these sigil cloth things that we just put over tables, for example. And they're not like a full table mat or table wrap, but it's just a way to kind of give it a little bit of color splash to, what otherwise just be that black table. So most of it goes to, I think, the individual games. And that's always a hard decision because like right now we're really pushing sales of Dungeons and Co. And I almost in retrospect wish I bought our Dungeons and Co. 10 by 10 banner and just put that in the back. And because, we're not big enough to have any real sort of brand recognition as WeRide Games. It's way more about the individual games for us. And, that might change, but, it's kind of it's a con by con decision for us that I think as we grow, we'll just maybe even get more complicated as we have more and more games and more projects we're trying to figure out how to market.
Well said. Because I like to imagine people follow my company, Chain Assembly, but I think it's just because they're already on my email list, not because they're a fan of the brand. They're just, luckily I get a lot of repeat people because they're a fan of the products I'm creating, but I don't think it's the brand specifically that draws them in. So
yeah, I think it's a thing to have to like build towards. And I think for us, it's I think we definitely do have some quote unquote some fans, but it's not necessarily like they'll just I don't think we have the brand recognition yet, and I think that's by design, and that's that's a far way off. But I think we do it to give ourselves legitimacy. To be honest, is kind of a it makes it seem more legit, even though when you look one level deeper, it's just four dudes in a trench coat, right? We're just kind of faking it till we make it, or faking it forever. So, anyways, yeah, it's a part of the grand facade.
So, can you tell me a bit about how that started and how you eventually built out a production company, and how, like, I guess just how that came to be?
Yeah, well, speaking of the grand facade, right? So I was a student at University of Pittsburgh, and I was a business student. I was a marketing and IT student basically, and I was like a B- student that would pull out a video at the end of every class and kind of slack off a little bit and then end up getting a B+ because the video, whatever. Like I would always find a way to make a video because that was my passion. That's what I did in my free time. I was in clubs for stuff like that, and I think the same rule applied for all my internships too, where I would be an okay intern and then pull out a video that was not part of my internship at all, but would somehow, get brownie points that way. So I think when I graduated, I realized I just wanted to do only that. And, I quickly, I think that's one thing that like, I instead of just being a freelancer, I kind of branded it as a company, right? And even though for the first 3-4 years, it really was just Stephen Kraus, the freelance videographer, but I branded it in such a way that it was like a full production agency. And that's not fair to the people who, like, the other freelancers I worked with or the other people that were part of that, because they definitely were part of that kind of the company feel. But I mean, for the first few years, it was just, I had no idea what I was doing. I was not operating it like a company whatsoever. I was just kind of a freelancer with a company name behind it. So, and just for context, and yeah, Anthem Video is a production company. I started, we're based out of Pittsburgh, and we're a full-fledged production agency. So we help organizations, nonprofits, all sorts of companies and people make video content and make commercials and make documentaries, which is yeah, a lot of fun. But I think one thing that I could go on about this, but that the beginning really was just me kind of wanting a place to sort of make money doing video, and again, faking it till I make it, right? And making a company name, company brand before I really had all those things, those pieces actually put in place. So there was a little bit of building of that brand before I actually became what I was faking it to be.
It was just you under the umbrella?
Yeah, it was just me under the umbrella.
Okay. And then what was the process on bringing more people as permanent members of Anthem Video?
Yeah, so a lot of the people I worked with originally were people I knew in college, people who I was in a really fantastic video club. We were essentially a TV station on campus at Pitt. And I, through that, met some fantastic filmmakers, collaborated with people and made friends. And so when I first started, I kind of brought some of those people that I had worked with very frequently. I had them freelancing with me, right? So mostly in editing, I would kind of do all the shooting, all the client relationship stuff, and then I'd have editors I'd work with that I mostly knew from that club, working with me on different video edits, because I am I'm an okay video editor, or I once was an okay video editor, but I think I'm a little bit more video editing takes a level of focus and attention and sitting your ass down for 10 hours that I kind of had quickly lost that skill set. Whatever that is, it's gone. So that was a really good way to the first people I brought on. Yeah, and they were all basically freelancers, 1099, and then I kind of evolved that to have some those same people, came in house, became salaried employees, and kind of grew from there. But that only became because there was the demand, right? Or there was the work consistently to have that. Oh, hit my microphone.
Well, I definitely want to pop in to say, those are the little moments of joy in my business that I live for, is when you find something that you hate doing, you identify something that you're not good at or you just hate doing, and you identify a portion of your income that can be allocated to having someone else do it. Those little bits are just...
I know. There's a quadrant, and I'm gonna butcher this because I think I heard it in a podcast in 2016, but it was really helpful for me because this random podcast kind of spelled it out okay, there's sort of four. It's a 2x2 quadrant, and there's things that you know how to do and are not good at. There's things you like to do that you're good at. There's things you don't like to do that you're good at. There's things you don't like to do that you're not good at, and there's things I'm butchering this. There's things you know how to do but aren't good at. I hope your listeners can get the point. There's a grid there that I'm messing up, but the point is that the podcast was saying you really got to look at that and figure out what are those things that you actually shouldn't be delegating things you don't know how to do. First off, you should delegate things you know how to do but hate doing, because that's the stuff that you can actually, manage a little bit. You can and that was the case for me. I knew how to jump into a video edit, maybe mentor people, maybe even just give notes on an edit. And if I was doing all that myself and maybe having other people learn how to pay taxes, how to build client relationships, right? I don't think I would have succeeded. I think that would have been a much harder path because, that was something that really stuck with me that helped me grow initially.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I always default to wanting to learn how to do the thing I don't know how to do. And once I've gotten proficient in it, and like you said, I get bored doing it or I hate doing it. For me, the first thing I was able to successfully offload was logistics, and that felt so great to not have to ship out my own Kickstarter pledges. And it's I'm paying a pretty penny for it, but if I manage my project correctly, I should have the funds available for all of that. And and like you said, having done it so many times before, I can then be a good arbiter on what's the correct way to do it when someone else is doing it. So beautifully put.
Yeah, no, it's I wish I remember the podcast that framed this, but it like, I think in 2016 I was just consuming anything I could find about that. But you're right, like there's things that like when you can offload that and it suddenly becomes something that's just under your purview, if you will, right? And you're not having to actually do the thing. It's huge, and it's it makes you feel so good, and it makes you feel very free in a way. So it's a very rewarding feeling.
So as Anthem Video, how do you go about getting new customers, and how is that similar, if at all, to getting new pledges on a board game on Kickstarter?
Ooh, good question. Okay, so with Anthem, we get new customers in lots of different ways. We get new customers. Well, we get new work from our existing customers, right? We're like we live and die by projects. Projects are going to come in. We're going to bid them. We're going to do them. We're going to get paid for them. And a lot of those times, those projects are coming from existing customers or people that are connected through existing customers, right? We just have a network that we've been able to build from doing successful projects, right? And we also get clients through SEO. If you Google Pittsburgh video production, right, we're on that list, which I always joke is like being a plumber, right? Like it's very much like some people are in the market for who can do video production in Pittsburgh, right? But the stuff that takes us a bit more national or maybe more to other cities in the US, it tends to be stuff that's just, hey, we did a good project for someone and that turned into something else, right? So we definitely have a lot of existing network. And then we also do a fair amount of email outreach, right? So I will, we have systems in place where we're going to cold email people. And the thing about that is it's a little bit hit or miss. Like there's seasons we do that we're not that busy, that we'll do a lot of outreach, and then we get busy, and then we have a hard time doing all that outreach. So, it's kind of a little bit of a lot of things that bring us business. But I think one thing that's been consistent that I've sort of had to kind of just trust in is the people that we've worked with that maybe they'll do a project every few years, but they do tend to come back, right? Or people will give you more business if you sort of trust the process, if that makes sense. So that's comparing that to WeRide Games. WeRide Games is way more, frankly, easier and more fun and more like humanistic to market and to sell and to get more customers, because with Anthem Video, I am selling something very ambiguous. I'm not selling a video. I'm selling a video service, and maybe I have to even suggest a video, an idea for a video at all. And I'm selling a professional service, which is very.
Are you ready to paint your own canvas in the real estate world as a homeowner? It's Leslie Haas from Realty One Group Sunshine, and I'm here to talk home equity, your masterpiece in the housing market. Imagine owning a piece of property that's not just a place to call yours, but also an investment opportunity. It's time to take that brush and start creating equity in your dream home. With interest rates on the verge of dropping, get ahead of the curve and secure your artistic haven before the next rush. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or upgrading your studio, let's sketch out your home ownership dreams together. To learn more, visit tampabayhomesforsale.realestate.
It's hard to sell, frankly, and you're selling hours into a project, and it's ambiguous and amorphous. Is that the word for it? Versus if you're selling a game, you are selling a box that has a thing in the box, and it is fun, and people know if they'll like it if they demo it, or if they see a video and they say, hey, that's for me. And like, I'm a board game fan. Everyone that we work with are board game fans. Like it doesn't, it's very I don't know, it's a little bit less ambiguous. It's a little bit more, it's also kind of not therapeutic. It's kind of rewarding comparatively to sell board games. And sometimes it's a little bit of like oh man, like selling board games is way much, like comparing it to the Anthem world, it's so much more cut and dry and fun. And, you see someone demoing a game, there's a lot of joy that comes out of selling it like that. I don't feel like I'm doing a hard sale. I feel like I'm kind of just, showing people what it is, and if they like it, to either be part of what we're doing, that's great. But Yeah, I hope that makes sense, but it's really like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I'm really
yeah.
curious about like how these cold calls go. Like, are you saying like, hey, we could do a commercial, we could do just videos for social media? Like, what do you use to try and sell your, like you said, amorphous services to someone who hadn't even considered that they may need a video?
Yeah, and I think this is good advice for, basically any professional service, right? It's like not just video, but anyone that runs any kind of marketing agency or does professional services. What I think of it is, as every time we have a successful project, I want to turn that into 5 more projects. Let's say we, make a video for a housing nonprofit, and I'm going to use a different example. It's a little specific. Let's say I make a video for a. Oh wait, hold on. Can I take a break for a second? I got one here. Sorry. So let's say we make a video for a robotics company, and the video turns out great. It's posted publicly. Awesome. I want to then be able to email 10 or 20 more robotics companies to say, hey, we did this video. Here's how it went. Here it is. Here's the link to the video. Would you be interested in working with us? Right. And it's kind of like, that's been a pretty successful way for us to do outreach, is just kind of saying, instead of saying, hey, we're Anthem Video, we make videos, do you want to work with us? We're saying, we did this for this company and we think we could do something similar, or at least just if you ever have a need, talk to us. And, only a small percentage of those actually want to have a conversation and want to convert to a customer. But at the end of the day, it's, I think, a little bit easier. It creates a bit more specific need. And it's, sometimes we'll hit companies that don't actually at that point need a video, but they watch it and they say, oh, we could use that. Or, we have a convention coming up. We didn't think about that, but we could really use this video to market ourselves, right? So, it's a little bit of, that being said, there's also companies we just reach out to and we say, we're Anthem, here's our portfolio. Do you want to talk, right? And those sometimes convert as well. So we're always sort of changing how we do email outreach, but I like to think of it as like pitching a very specific kind of video or recent success that we can leverage into another one.
I love that idea of like, you find yourself working in a niche and then you use that as evidence that you have succeeded in that niche. I think that's beautiful. And then you probably have things that will maybe like bridge the gap of 2 niches, so you can use it as an example and transition sideways.
Totally. Yeah, and I think our website, we have it laid out kind of accordingly. We have a portfolio laid out both by type of video, like is it a event sizzle video, is it a documentary, is it a explainer video, and we also have it laid out by industry. So if you're are you in healthcare, are you in a nonprofit space, like we kind of try to make it so it shows no matter where you are, we have a video that we've done that's similar. So yeah, I think that's something that we've kind of fallen into for sure. We have we have editors that are on the team permanently. Actually, honestly, for in-house full-time staff, we have a creative director / editor, and that is Kelsey, who I've talked about, who also made some of the amazing props for WeRide Games, as well as a COO, and that is her name's Whitney, and that is highly. I mean, let me take a step back. I think that kind of the permanent roles really came out of figuring out, like, back to that quadrant, the things that I wasn't good at, kind of had no interest in, or kind of had lost time for. And I think early on, I very much did everything, and having a COO role who can do a lot of the client management stuff, help me out with proposals, and make sure that things stay running, especially when I'm deep into another project, right? If I'm working on a project to actually create, film it or create some of the pre-production for it, it's super helpful to have someone else on the ball who can keep things moving, answer questions, and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So that's a huge part of it, is that COO role. And then another creative director who can not just do some of the editing and client work there, but can also make sure there's consistent quality control, consistent creative on everything we do.
So what does the COO do, I guess? Specifically, like, what did they take off your hands by bringing that person on?
Yeah, so they do a little bit of everything, but I think the main things that the COO does is project management. That's a big part of the everyday, is figuring out. If you ever watch the show Mad Men, they always talk about the traffic managers or traffic meetings, and I think that's a great thing to call it, because it's just making sure that, clients have what they need, that if there's questions, they're getting answered. It's basically just connecting, and also honestly, like pushing clients, right? And getting them to give us the information that we need to either quote the project, to get that quoted project to a decision, and to, close out projects and keep things moving. So, full-time emailing is basically a lot of it, as well as strategy, as well as HR, as well as also helping me in sales world, right? So if I'm taking a sales call, I want to also record that call, share it with Whitney, and be able to like have some of those sales, she'll help me with the proposal, and then we'll review it together and make sure it's feeling good for both of us, right? So basically it's someone who can kind of be a clone of me in a lot of respects and do those things that I have kind of outgrown as I'm much busier shooting, for example, right? Shooting, like, being on set and actually recording the videos.
Is WeRide Games connected to Anthem Video in any like legal sense, or are they two completely separate entities?
No, they're connected in a legal sense. That is because I think WeRide Games, the hope is that it'll grow to a point where it makes sense to have it be two separate things, and that there's less. I think that there also won't be enough revenue and profit to cover the overheads of doing a separate tax return, doing some separate administration. That being said, I try to make them. I have them very separate in terms of the bookkeeping, the finances, and so I've kind of found an efficient way to run them under one umbrella. But it is helpful to have the ability to do that, to have it be under the same roof, if you will.
So what are some software tools that you find indispensable in regards to running a Kickstarter-based board game business, or running Anthem Video, like project management and something like that? Like, what are the tools that have been really helpful to you?
So I think the most helpful tools, and I don't want to name specific tools. Well, I can name specific tools, but I think generally the big things for us have been, for WeRide, simple project management tools, right? Even like keeping it all in Google Workplace, keeping it all in documents and not really leaving Google has been the way to make sure that everyone's on the same page and nothing gets lost. And that, I think this is true for a lot of project management tools. It really has to match what the team is comfortable with. And so if I threw some of the tools I use for Anthem Video at WeRide, I think it wouldn't work. Like with Anthem Video, we use, we're all on Slack. We have ClickUp, which is like a really powerful project management tool. Lots of automations in there. We use like various review platforms called like Frame.io, for example. But if I threw that same approach to WeRide, it would just be like, I don't know. Sure. It's unnecessary, and I think everyone would be like, this feels silly. All we need is a Google Doc, which is true, right? So, I think that's been helpful to kind of fit the different tools for the projects. That being said, there's sometimes I want to I always want to I always have the instinct to like over design the tool, or like sort of create apply a tool before the actual need exists for it. So that is a weakness of mine. I've sometimes over engineer the software approach.
Doing the logistics and tracking all the pledges and stuff. It helps that Kickstarter outputs everything as a spreadsheet. And then just import that into your Google Drive and bam, you're done. Now I always have that as like a locked data sheet that I cannot edit, and I just import that stuff into another sheet that I can mess with and add filters to and checkbox toggle things in and off. I go absurd with the conditional formatting. Do you have experience with BackerKit as a tool to help organize pledges?
I was just gonna say, BackerKit was a big part of how we did Dungeons & Co., and that was a huge win for us. It not only helped us manage the pledges, we also did a fair amount of upselling after the campaign had completed. So that was a great tool, and one that I think we're going to use for all future, any future project. BackerKit was great, and that's the best when it can not only be something that accomplishes the need, like for us, like order fulfillment or order tracking, order fulfillment, but it also gave us that ability to drive revenue. That's a win-win for us. So that was a big win for us, or big tool for us to use.
It's always, so this is my second time using BackerKit for fulfillment. I use it for launch on just about every project. I use BackerKit launch for just about every project. But this is my current one is the second time I've used it for fulfillment. And not fulfillment, for Pledge Manager. And for those listening who don't know, it's basically a tool that imports what everybody selected or pledged for in Kickstarter, and then it emails all those people and says, hey, this is what you pledged for. Would you like to add more? Also, what is your address, and here's what we need to charge for shipping. Things that Kickstarter does not do really well.
Yeah.
But what's incredibly impressive is how well the Pledge Manager interface gets people to pledge additional money for more products. If I had just emailed them and said, hey, I made a playing card deck out of the art that you already pledged for, maybe like 10% would say, yeah, I want it. But through the Pledge Manager, it feels more like 20 to 25% who say, yeah, I want it. And it's so weird how well they've managed to just be so good at that one thing, at upselling your existing customers.
It's so funny. Like, I think there's a lot of like that whole idea of like good UX or user design can just increase sales. And I think it's something that I think I know academically, or like I've read it in enough books where I'm like, that's true, but I don't always act accordingly. Like, I don't think, I think that's something I always needs to sort of see it to believe it. And then BackerKit is one of those examples for us. That's like, yeah, this just converts way more. I think it all comes down to, like, in your words, they make it easy, and they make it, they do a better job than the other existing tools or even Kickstarter themselves. And so that's, end of the day, it's like, it's kind of magic, but I think we're always looking for tools like that, and BackerKit was like an easy and successful way to do that.
It is ironic though, because on the creator side, the UX is god awful. Like, it does its best to try and guide you through it, but just like if you go to BackerKit.com, it's so hard to find what you're trying to find, because they offer so many tools, and those tools are all tied to different projects. And then you have to find your project and choose which tool underneath that. And I constantly get lost in. But luckily, they have a great support team, and they're like, oh, here's the button you're looking for. So it is like you have to set apart maybe 2 or 3 days to set it all up in the back end for the Pledge Manager, which is pretty funny.
Luckily, Kenny on our team, I think he was the one who dared the wilderness there and jumped in and learned all of it. So all I saw was printed labels, and that's not true. I probably was in it a little more than that, but I mostly just saw the end product and the pretty labels, and I was like, all right, this is great. So, that's my my privilege there.
WeRide Games comprised of some of the same people at Anthem Video?
No, it is different people. So it's WeRide Games is myself, Kenny, Cole, Damien. And we are, so, and none of those people are necessarily involved in Anthem Video. However, I do collaborate with Cole Jarvis, who's on the WeRide Games team. He's a marketing guru, runs his own ad agency called Jarvis Media. And Cole has actually collaborated with me, and we've worked on some projects together, some client projects. And so, but mostly no, but there are definitely cases where we do collaborate. But that also just comes down to the fact that we're 4 best friends from high school, and we that's kind of the, I don't necessarily know if that's because of WeRide Games that we collaborate. That's just because we're really tight. So
looking at right now, I'm looking at the Dungeons & Co. Kickstarter project, and I see you had 248 backers. Did you do any or do you have any sense of how many people came to you because they pledged to the dog game? Sorry, I forgot the name of it.
No, it's okay. That's a good. I don't actually know. I should know. I should have a better answer for this. I do think there definitely was some overlap, because we, had people that we talked to that was, came from Knights of the Round Table, but, and of course people who are gold tier supporters of us, aka our families, who are, I think, sometimes back both, right? So I definitely think there are some, but I think for the most part, there's slightly different audiences. And I will say, though, we had some people we talked to. Again, this is more anecdotal than data-based, but a lot of people that we, a lot of the audience for Knights of the Round Table were like kids, and for And like, it was parents who maybe were into deck building or had experience with like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, and were kind of trying to find a way to like get their kids into those things, or their kid just this game is a bit more streamlined version of some of those larger deck building games. So anyways, we definitely have a lot of audience that are kids that I think some of them were, I don't want to say like graduated to Dungeons and Co, but I think there are some like Dungeons and Co is we kind of target it as 11 and up is kind of the age range. But I think there's some overlap there with Knights of the Round Table, where it is Dungeons and Co is not a overly complex game. It is not a heavy game weight wise, but it has some of the same, like there's weightier mechanics or weightier parts of it that are sort of streamlined in a way where a younger audience can get into it, and it has some kind of tactile fun appeal, maybe compared to other games. So I think there's a little bit of an overlap in the kids that were into Knights of the Round Table that also, this is something that they're also played Dungeons and Co.
So I know I feel like tradition, maybe not tradition, but one thing you commonly see on board game Kickstarter projects is at the top is just a whole bunch of reviews for the product from I guess what I'm getting at is this is kind of the space I'm thinking about for my upcoming game. Did you do any samples of the game that you shipped out to reviewers to get feedback, to put specifically with the intent to make as a marketing product, maybe that's not the right word, a marketing push to put on your landing page for the Kickstarter?
We did. I think we did some with Dice Tower as well as some other smaller reviewers too. But we kind of have done that both for it kind of hits a couple different boxes for us. It checks a different couple boxes. It checks it's great to have reviews and to have that as kind of a social proof on your side. It also, frankly, gives you pull quotes that you can use that tend to be a really, great way to spruce up the landing page and give yourself some legitimacy. And it also is marketing for us, where we can tap into some of those networks. However, I don't know if it's been like I don't think it's been like a huge driver for us, but it's something that I think is part of the complete breakfast, right? It's something that has been part of the success, but I don't know if I have a number of like that of how how successful that's been in terms of traffic.
Potential Kickstarter customers would bypass a project because they don't see a review. Like, I know it's not really so I've done it on, I think, 2 of my tarot projects where I sent out samples, got reviews from like tarot readers or people who have tarot related social media things. Then I put their quotes on my page with links to them. And there's, like you said, there's no way to quantify whether or not that makes a difference. But
totally.
It's definitely not the norm to include review information on a tarot project or a metaphysical project. But because it feels like the default for board game things, and also I don't want to play that game because so many reviewers, you have to pay them to review your project, and that feels so weird.
Yeah.
So what was your experience working with the Dice Tower in that regard?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask. I think that was more of a Kenny task as well. Which that goes back to my, we all have one part of the process there. However, I think I will say this. I think like we had them also review Knights of the Round Table, and so I think that was really positive, right? To have both some of the same people reviewing, one game as the other. We got a little bit of this. Like they could see what we're doing. They could harken back to the old game and also say, these are the people who made this, and here's kind of how that is related to this, right? Here's the things that they do similarly. Here's the strengths of both. I mean, we put a lot of effort into our art and I would say world building of our board games, and character design. So I think like the reviewers kind of captured that pretty well, we thought, and were able to help us lean into our strengths. No worries.
Okay, now I remember. So, again, this might be a Kenny question, but because these are review copies that you're sending out before the thing's actually in production, are these like made by the game crafter, or do you have your manufacturer do a small batch before the big run?
So yeah, these are game crafter versions, and which I think people get, and people, there's always a balance, right? We want to make it so it's good enough that it's going to show well on their cameras, and it's going to, it's going to look solid. But of course, they're pre-production unit, and there's also things that aren't finalized, and some rules that are going to probably even be tweaked. So I think that's one thing I'd love to, like, we actually haven't had that much of a like shipped proof yet, and I think it's something that we want to do for our next games to kind of cover a lot of boxes for us, right? Have reviewers handle the actual closer to the final product of the game, and also gives us a chance to just review everything. That's not true. We did have a proof for Dungeons and Co. that came in. I don't think it's the one we actually sent to reviewers. I think we had the review copies happen much earlier in that process. So yeah, that's something we'd like to do, but haven't figured out a way to do it quite yet.
Over 10 projects now. So I wonder if I say to her, hey, I'm going to be doing a huge order of this game. Can I do a small sample order of 10 copies first? Normally they wouldn't allow that because they have minimum order quantities they got to hit. But I'm curious to know if, because I've been developing that relationship with them over the years, they might be okay with that.
I think they would. Well, I hope they would, right? But I think only because you have that relationship, and they sort of they have a, because you would need. There
will be an order down the road. Yeah.
Exactly. You will hit that minimum order quality at some point. Mm-hmm. And I think you just might have to pay more in that shipping process, but I think that'd be worth it. I mean, that's one thing we've worked with 2 different manufacturers for both projects, and when you're at a booth, you have different manufacturers come up to you. You're talking about potential future projects, and that's always a question I ask: is tell me about your proofing, both your digital and potentially physical proofing methods. And I'm always thinking, how can that proofing method also tie into what you're talking about, review copies or just marketing promo stuff? So yeah, that is something that is would be huge to kind of dial in. And I think because you have the relationship with them, I'd hope they'd be open to that, because that would be a big win for sure.
Yeah, again, it's just me thinking about it out loud, but I mean, the majority of the parts I can get made from the Game Crafter, and that would be cheaper than doing a 20 unit order, I'm sure, from China. But there's like a couple of items that the Game Crafter can't do well. Like, for example, with my upcoming game, I have a specific size I need for the boards. And I know the sample for your trick-or-treating game that I saw at Origins, I'm pretty sure that was the Game Crafter. Just because the board had so much negative space around it, I'm like, okay, you have to go for the specific board size for that. And so I'm thinking maybe I'll just make the boards myself, but like if I'm going to have them do anything, what I would really need a manufacturer to do for me for the sample is the box and the boards. Everything else I can offload to the Game Crafter, and it'll look like a ready-to-sell game.
I wonder if is also you can kind of piecemeal it and assemble that yourself at the end of the process. Yeah. So yeah, it's funny how those things are. It is very disconnected, but I would love a workflow that allowed them to be streamlined and connected. But I don't think it's funny. Like I kind of feel like I feel like I'm in the minority wanting that to be one company that I can work with on both. But I of course understand why that can't be always a reality. But if someone came to me and was like, oh yeah, we can make that prototyping process easier, maybe not as cost effective, but gives me the same level of, okay, what I see is what I get, right? It lets us be iterative in how we're designing it, and because nothing's scarier than receiving the full shipment, and it is like terrifying for us at least, and it hasn't been an issue, but it is genuinely terrifying.
So moving on, what is next for Anthem Video or WeRide Games?
Yeah, so what's next for WeRide Games is we are hard at work at October's End. This is a game really came out of the we all we're close friends from middle school, from high school, and when we were growing up, we would trick or treat Halloween night, and it'd always be this candy economy that would develop. Like at the end of a trick or treating session, there's like this: everyone dumps their candy on the table. At least we did, right? And there was a trading process. There was a stock market essentially for various fun-sized candy bars. And there's also the classic, like, what houses are going to give you the good stuff, right? What neighborhoods are going to give you the good stuff. What, like, you have a strategy, and it's wild how that'll develop. And I think we tried our best to kind of encapsulate that into a game. And It's essentially a tile placement game where you are exploring a board. You and other players are exploring a board. You're placing random tiles out of a collective, bag. That's the word for it. And similar to Carcassonne, really, developing a map that you can explore and collect candy, defeat monsters. And we're really excited about it. It's actually, it was play tested a ton by Kenny and Cole, who were the ones who came up with the core loop and kind of did the initial design on it. And they were both living in LA at the time, and they just spent a ton of lockdown time working on it together. And I think more than any other game we've had, this one has had the most play testing just from like even the core designing group. So, this game was essentially in a pretty finished gameplay state since 2021. And I think we've just been honing some of those things, working on art. So it's been a long time coming, and we're really excited to, do that next marketing push for it.
Great. So how can people find this game? Do you have any sign up forms for updates or anything online?
Yes. So we are not launching it. We're not on Kickstarter yet. We don't have a Kickstarter specific page for it. But if you go to WeRide Games, WeRideGames.com, and you go to the contact page, if you just put your name down into our email newsletter, or really any page on the site, you scroll down to the bottom, there's going to be a newsletter sign up. That's really the best way to stay updated. We are hoping to do start really doing the campaign, and we're starting to do our marketing launch later this summer. Gearing up to either a fall Kickstarter or potentially a little bit later. Again, we're all a little bit busy right now at the moment, but we're really excited to get that moving. So,
in regard to a game like October's End,
good question. It is email list. It is that was really the biggest thing that made us successful in my view for Knights of the Round Table. And successful, I just mean had a successful funded launch, right? I think that was we really got the advice early that you need an email list that's gonna you have to really trust that a certain number of people are gonna convert, and that came down to running some ads, that came down to posting on Reddit, that came down to going to conventions. And so our big marketing push for October's End has been, even at Origins, being able to talk to people about it, get some email signups. And I think our next thing is to start to even warm up our existing email newsletter from previous games and gauge interest and start to get everything going, and also get Kickstarter page follows before it launches. So that's kind of our next step, is to get all of those things in place.
I do recommend looking into backer kit launch as your first step. It's basically just a landing page that you can create before your Kickstarter's anywhere near being done, that you can fill with images, graphics, descriptions, videos, whatever, and then on the bottom is a link or a space for them to type in their email address to sign up for updates, and then after they do that, it takes them to whatever website you want to take them to. So you can have them go to WeRide Games until you have the Kickstarter pre-launch page up, and when that is up, you can then direct them to the pre-launch page.
That's a great point.
People just natively find that web page too through the backer kit interface, or just Googling board games about Halloween for kids. And if your SBO is on that description, they'll find that landing page.
Yeah, I think I don't even think actually we did launch last time around. I think we just used it for the fulfillment side. This is good for us to look at. We've been doing a similar thing just on our own, like WeRideGames.com/game name, right? And there's just a very simple put your email in here. I mean, our first WeRide Games site was literally a Knights of the Round Table, couple JPEGs, and a contact form plugin that was pretty janky. So the people, but you can skip all that and be able to use something like backer kit launch. That's huge.
Stephen, it was wonderful chatting with you. And to leave it off again with the listeners, they can follow your company at anthem.video, or you can find Stephen's games at WeRideGames.com. You're also on Instagram as @anthem.video and @we_ride_games. Anything I missed?
Nope, that sounds all of it. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate it.
Art for Profit's Sake is recorded through Riverside FM, distributed through Spotify for podcasters, and edited on Adobe Audition. The music is provided by Old Romans. If you learned anything useful or found this podcast helpful, please rate and review us 5 stars. If you want to learn more about me or my art, head over to chainassembly.com.